Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Eden, and I'm coming to you today, this afternoon, from the teepee grounds at Giskapikia. So I'd like to thank them for their welcome, and I'd like to say hello to our cameraman Walter in the back. Walter also supplied the bug spray because the mosquitoes are pretty bad. But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful summer day. I was asked to speak to you today about military history. Of course, in the same theme of Nesisieg, the three cultures, one of the things that we have in common here in the Gaspé region is military service. Every community, whether it's English, French, Micmac, we all have a long and proud history of military service. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about three, actually, it's going to be four people from each culture, and tell you a little bit about their war stories. We'll start with, being that we're in Giskapigia, we'll start with Sergeant Frank Narcisse Jerome. Now, Frank Narcisse Jerome was born here, and he served during the First World War. So the First World War, that's from 1914 to 1918. So over 100 years ago. Pardon me. Now, Sergeant Jerome joined the Canadian Expeditionary Force in 1916. There was a group of recruiters from the 189th Battalion, the Fusiliers de Saint-Laurent. They traveled around the Gaspé coast and recruited, and they recruited young Frank Narcisse Jerome. And he ended up going overseas. And once he arrived in England, he was transferred to the 14th Battalion, the Royal Montreal Regiment. And in the late fall of 1916, he arrived on the front. And he arrived on the front in a place called the Somme. It's a region in France. And by the time he arrived there, the Battle of the Somme had just ended. The Battle of the Somme, for those who don't know, was the bloodiest battle in human history. We're talking millions of casualties, wounded and dead. So he arrived sort of in the thick of that, if you will, and he went on to fight in places such as Vimy. Those of you probably familiar with Vimy, if you look at a $20 bill, on the reverse side of the $20 bill, you'll see the memorial at Vimy. So Frank Narcisse Jerome took part in that. Then he fought in a place called Hill 70, which is not far from Vimy. And then a few months after that, he fought in a place called Passchendaele in Belgium. Passchendaele is known as one of the more brutal battles in the First World War. Just think of the old images that we see of the First World War with the mud and all of that there. He took part in that battle as well. But it's in the year of 1918 that the Frank Narcisse Jerome sort of stands out. Over the course of just a few months, he was awarded the Military Medal. The Military Medal is awarded for bravery in the field, in the face of the enemy. And now he was awarded that particular medal on 3 different occasions. So those of you who will be visiting the Interpretation Center here in Giskapigia, there's an exhibit that's being prepared. You'll be able to see a replica uniform of Sergeant Jerome as well as his medals. Now, the fact that he won the military medal 3 times ranks him at the top of First Nations soldiers in Canadian military history. He would be tied, if you will, with a fellow by the name of Francis Pegamagabo. I'm checking Walter to make sure I have the pronunciation right, and he's giving me a nod. So Francis Pegamagabo from Georgian Bay area in Ontario also was awarded the military medal 3 times. So it's impossible to look at this region's military history without taking note, if you will, of Sergeant Jerome. So just remember the name. Sergeant Frank Narcisse Jerome was awarded the military medal on 3 different occasions. Our next person, actually, I'm going to talk about two brothers. Next, it's going to be Augustin and Félix Goulet. Augustin and Félix Goulet were born in New Brunswick, but raised here in the area, the Baie des Chaleurs. Pardon me. And they both joined the military as young men in 1915. Went overseas. Now, in June of 1916, there was the Battle of Mount Sorel in Belgium, near the city of Ypres. And in that battle, Augustin, there was a shell exploded at his feet, and he was badly wounded to the thigh, but he also lost his left arm. And when we look at his records, the actual medical term was complete disarticulation at left shoulder joint. So he lost his left arm in the battle, so the war ended for him, but we'll be coming back to him in a minute. His brother, Félix, was also wounded in Belgium. He was wounded, shrapnel wounds to the head and upper back. He spent about a year in hospital and in rehab in hospital in England. However, he was sent back to the front, and he served in all of the battles. He served at Vimy, all of the other battles that I named earlier, the Hill 70 and all of that, the whole kit right to the end. At Vimy, he was in charge of stretchers, a section of stretcher bearers. So you can imagine sort of the scenes that he would have seen. So that was pretty devastating. Félix survived the war, came back to New Richmond, and lived into his 80s. Now back to Augustin, who lost his left arm. After the war, he became very active in the establishing of the Royal Canadian Legion in the area. He's the founding president of the Royal Canadian Legion in New Carlisle, and he's also the founding president of the Royal Canadian Legion in New Richmond. And he was involved in all types of things. He was an insurance broker for a while. He was also the jailer in New Carlisle. And when the Second World War broke out, he volunteered for service again, even though he had been wounded badly in the First World War and was amputated from the left arm. He volunteered again, and he served in what was called the Home Guard. And he was promoted to lieutenant, became an officer, and he's also one of the few French Canadians to have been awarded the Medal of the British Empire, the MBE. So Augustin and Félix Goulet, those are also two important figures to remember here in the region in terms of military history. Now, the third one I'd like to speak about from the English-speaking community was Billy Stewart. Billy Stewart was from New Richmond, and when the Second World War broke out, he volunteered for service in the Air Force, and he became a pilot, and he went overseas, and he became a bomber pilot, and he flew bombing missions over Germany, cities like Berlin, Essen, and so on. He was actually shot down at one point, but he was shot, and he was able to bring the bomber back to England and sort of crash landed. But everybody in the crew survived. Now, on the night of June 12th to June 13th, roughly a week after the D-Day landings in Normandy, Billy Stewart, who at this point was a squadron leader. A squadron leader is sort of equivalent to a major in the Army. And he was the youngest squadron leader among the Canadians at that point. He was only 23 years old. So on the night of the 12th and 13th of June, he flew a bombing mission over the city of Cambrai, France. The idea there was to bomb the railway yards. And on his way to carry out his mission, they were shot down, and there were no survivors. And they're buried in a cemetery in Foranville, France. So Billy Stewart. So there you go. So we have from each of our each of our cultures, we have some short stories in terms of our common military heritage. We have Sergeant Frank Narcisse Jerome. We have Felix and Augustin Goulet, and we have Billy Stewart. So among the many things that we have in common in this region is a proud military heritage. So thank you very much.